Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. And today we are in episode number 54. We have 54. A special guest with us. We have James Reynolds from SentriLock. James, great to have you on this morning.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. Episode 54. We're flying along. So thanks so much for joining us. And today we're going to jump into a very important issue because we're going to talk a lot about safety and security. And I find that this is one of those topics that we just, as an industry, don't talk enough about, but we should be, because the technology is there and the technology is changing so rapidly that we have the ability to really level up the security that we provide to our clients. And today I think we're going to be talking a lot about that. So really excited to jump into this issue, to hear more about you, your history with the company, and maybe you can just start off with telling us, what is this technology that we're going to be talking about today?
Well, sure thing. Well, when our customers approach us, our customers are real estate boards and multiple listing services. They are looking for the best technology possible for secure access into the homes, and lockboxes may or may not be the most secure solution, but it's important they be as secure as possible. It needs to be because of the enormous convenience factor that they offer and how popular they are. They also need to be safe, and so that's where SentriLock comes from. We are a technology company founded 18 years ago, and our founders saw a need to enter the business because there wasn't much choice. There wasn't competition in the field of electronic lockboxes. In fact, there was one vendor who had dominated the industry and enjoyed a nice monopoly for decades. And initially that worked out just fine, but over time, as that company became more corporate and became owned by a big multinational company, it wasn't any longer a good fit for all of their existing customers. And so the door was open for a viable competitor to enter the market and meet some needs that this monopoly wasn't meeting, and that turned out to be SentriLock. We were in the right place at the right time, meeting a need. It's surprising to think, with all the challenges facing the real estate industry, that around the year 2000, the biggest issue for most real estate boards and what they were most complaining to their national association about, both NAR in the USA and CREA in Canada, was the lack of competition in the electronic lockbox business. There were national task force formed to badger these organizations to do something about it. They said, we need competition. This one company is bleeding us and not listening to us and not innovating. And they have a monopoly. We have nowhere to turn. And so that was the atmosphere in the industry when SentriLock launched in 2003 with our first installation in 2004. We were welcomed with open arms in the industry. And we have the unique situation as a vendor is that our parent company, our owner, is the National Association of Realtors. And so the customers I'm calling on, I'm basically already in the family. We are owned by their national trade organization, which is unlike any other vendor that the industry deals with, unlike the MLS vendors, unlike the showing service vendors. We don't have shareholders to satisfy. We have to make our owner look good and make agents feel like they're getting the value that they deserve for what this is costing them. So it's a really unique model that we operate under, and it's been real successful. I think we've been lucky.
So James, maybe give us a little bit of your background personally, how you got involved with SentriLock. Were you there back in 2003, 2004? Were you part of it back then?
Well, this is all I know are electronic lockboxes. But prior to SentriLock, I had a 16-year career as a technology salesperson in the MLS side of the business. So you and your agents in your market, you're very familiar with the the CoreLogic Matrix MLS system. Well, I worked for one of those companies, a competitor to CoreLogic. So I've been calling on real estate boards and been involved in their technology decisions for close to 40 years now. You know, I mean, since the mid 80s. And so I've watched organized real estate evolve in those days, you know, from the MLS books to the first computerized MLS systems. And I experienced, you know, as a young person in the industry, the pushback. You know, there were agents in those days that wanted nothing to do with computerized technology. You know, they've been using MLS books for years and they've been working great, and they were very resistant to change. But organized real estate was very late in adopting technology, and this wasn't the fault of the practitioners. It was the fault of the book publishers. You know, the industry was dominated by two companies that printed the MLS books. And these books were, you know, basically, you know, the lifeblood of the agents. These directories that came out, depending on your board that you belonged to, it might have been, in some cases, a weekly publication, but more often it was bi-monthly, in some cases only monthly. In the few cases, it was a quarterly directory, but this was where all the homes for sale were listed. But the problem was those things were out of date by the time the first copy came off the printing press, because, you know, house sold, it wasn't going to be updated until the next book. But the industry embraced these books and were very attached to them, and we had to pry them from people's hands basically and get them to put their hands on the keyboard. And that's where I came in during that transition. It was a lot of fun because the people that pushed back the hardest ended up being, you know, the biggest fans of the industry, and it changed the industry. And, you know, the next big evolution after that was the information moving to the internet, you know, and having public facing resources, and organized real estate was afraid that this was going to obsolete them, that with the consumers having their own access to the homes for sale, that this was going to make the realtor redundant, when in reality it made the realtor more important, you know, to be the person that could bring the deals to a close after the consumer had done some of their homework. But boy, it was a big change and a lot of fear. And I was part of that. I worked at realtor.com for 2 years, working with the boards in giving us their data and getting the data posted and getting them past those fears. So I've dealt with technology fear my whole career. So then lo and behold, in 2003, a company was being formed in Cincinnati, Ohio. There were these five entrepreneurs, these five engineers, software engineer, a hardware engineer, an electrical engineer, got together and had determined there was a need for an electronic lockbox company. In fact, I think it was the Cincinnati Board of Realtors who had contacted one of these men and said, you know, you've got the skills, you've got the knowledge to create a competing lockbox system, you know, why don't you try and do it? And by golly, he did it. And I knew these people. They had done other real estate applications in the industry, so I'd had dealings with them, and they recruited me and hired me as their first employee. So in 2003, I joined the company as employee number 1 at SentriLock, with a portfolio full of boards that I had worked with over the years, who I knew I had firsthand knowledge that they were very interested in an alternative lockbox technology, and that they trusted me. And if I told them it was a viable product, they were going to believe me. So I needed this company to convince me it was a viable product to protect myself. And by golly, it was. You know, it was a platform that was, like I said, I was welcomed with open arms. The floodgates basically opened. We grew. I think NAR's hoped for us that we would bring in 1 new customer in our first year. And I think we brought in 38 real estate boards in the US and Canada, signed on with us. And just like I said, the floodgates opened, and we have remained busy for 18 years. I think we've done 21 new board installations in the last year, most of them competitive takeaways from this other company. So their market share is down to about, I think, maybe 60% of organized real estate, and we're the other 40%. But we're the startup, you know, that grew from 0 market share to our 40%, and we continue to grow. And they don't. So we owe them a lot. So
James, you consider the real estate boards as your clients? Like you're selling it to them, or through them you're selling directly to brokerages?
We are selling directly to the boards. And in most cases, it is the board and not the multiple listing service that provides the lockbox service. For example, in Ontario, we have contracts with 17 real estate boards. Now, 14 of those boards belong to a regional MLS called Ortis, but Ortis deals with the multiple listing service. They provide the matrix MLS system, but they let the boards handle the lockboxes. And this really was a decision that was made as a concession, as these boards gave up their MLS systems and turned it over to regional MLSs, they were losing that control and losing that service they provided. And it was a revenue generator. Most boards, MLSs, need to mark up their costs, so that it's a revenue generator, sometimes in some cases, even a for-profit proposition. And so in most cases, the real estate boards were allowed to keep the lockbox business as a concession, saying, we've taken your MLS business from you, but we know you need non-dues revenue, so you can have the lockbox business. We don't want it because it seems so complicated to manage, but it's not. But most MLSs are happy to let the boards, have that piece of business. So most of our customers are the local real estate board, and in some cases, the multiple listing service, but that's the exception to the rule.
So
But
what's
we
the
don't deal
process
with the brokers.
then to get a lockbox from you to the board to David's brokerage at Sutton Summit to an actual agent?
Sure. Most associations vet out their vendors, whether it's a lockbox vendor, an MLS vendor, maybe, a year and a half before they have to, before a current contract expires, for example. So very often a lockbox task force is formed at the real estate association. They are tasked with vetting out the options. And when it comes to lockboxes, it's basically us and the other guys, and to solicit bids from us. I often receive a very informal RFP, a request for a proposal from a realtor association. I put together the pricing and product information. I often meet in person to do a live presentation and do what they call the dog and pony show. And if I do my job well, chances are the vote for a recommendation is going to fall in favor of SentriLock, and the task force is going to recommend to the board leadership, we recommend the SentriLock system. And from there, the board approves the recommendation. We have a very brief contract negotiation period because our contracts are standardized. Our customers sign the real estate board signs a very standard service agreement with us that over the next 84 months or 8 years or 7 years or 6 years, what have you, that we're going to be their exclusive provider of electronic lockbox service. And here's all the things we're going to do for them. Here's our responsibilities, and here's your responsibilities. Typically, when the contract is signed, 6 months later is the implementation event. Communications start to go out to the members, letting them know, hey, we're switching to the SentriLock system. This August. Here's what you need to know. Here's links where you need to click on to download the SentriLock app. Here's where you sign up for your virtual classes you're going to take prior to. Here's the details about how you're going to come in and pick up your new lockboxes. And so that implementation event takes place. Now, pre-COVID, that was always an in-person event. It was a carnival. It was a boot camp, bringing whether it was hundreds or thousands of agents through a facility to sit through a presentation, a class, in many cases drop off their old lockboxes, pick up their new boxes. It was a big, complicated event. During COVID, that whole thing had to change to a virtual model where all the training was done via meetings like this on Zoom, and we began to drop ship the boxes directly to the brokerage offices. Yet still, we don't have a contract or a business relationship with the brokerage. It's a service. We're the vendor doing this on behalf of the association, the real estate board, because it's their SentriLock system. It's their service they're providing to their members, and we're there helping them with the launch. We're with the onboarding of the system. We're very much in the picture, but we're not physically there. It's all done remotely, and it's worked beautifully. Since we've switched to a virtual model, and it's funny that your industry would have resisted that, would have refused. They would have demanded that we be on site and that we conduct this boot camp. And now that these virtual events have gone so effectively, it's their preference. We get much better reviews and ratings. And so It's a lot less painful for the agents. They don't have to dedicate a 2 or 3 hour block of time to sit through a day of ordeal of a conversion event. It's all more done. It's just real simplified, and people like it a lot. So the boxes are in the agent's hands. They arrive to the office pre-programmed, whether that office is getting 10 boxes or 50 boxes. Those boxes arrive pre-programmed and pre-owned by the agents in that office who are participating, people who are subscribing to the service, and they can hit the ground running. They can open up their app. They've learned how to use the app to take off the shackle and put the doorknob, put the box on the doorknob, showing agents know how to open the boxes, and we proceed from there.
So David, when you receive a bunch of these at your end, what do? Like, you have a control system as to how you get them to different agents, or how do you deal with the distribution at your end?
Well, it's a great question, one that I'm sure I'm going to have to learn at some point in the future. But my understanding, James, is that your talks with the Mississauga Real Estate Board are still in their preliminary phase. They haven't implemented a blanket decision yet, but they are considering it. And I think it's an important decision. I think it's a decision that, we have to support as members of the board, because, I don't think we talk enough about our clients' safety and security. And we've all seen the videos on YouTube of how easy some of these log boxes are to pick. And at the end of the day, the client's keys are inside. And once somebody has access to that log box, they have unfeathered access and unchecked access into a client's home. And, I think as an industry, the technology is there, and we can be doing better, and we should be doing better. One of my favorite features of your lock, James, is the fact that every single time it's opened, the listing agent gets an instant notification that the lockbox has been opened, and not only that, by who it's been accessed and opened, right? So the sense of control, the sense of control is great. And I mean, I can see, a lot of really great applications where, people might be running late, people might be running early, the wrong agent is accessing the property. And, there's a lot of information that is flowing back to the listing agent. And, he can instantly pick up the phone, communicate with that agent, get in touch with the sellers, and really know exactly what's happening with the showing every step of the way. The other aspect that I really like is, we get complaints all the time that agents miss appointments, they book appointments and they miss appointments. And this is a big RICO and MREB rule that, you have to cancel, you have to notify the listing office that you're not intending on showing up and that you're canceling. And look, homeowners take a long time. Sometimes, they have kids. Sometimes it takes hours to get a house ready for showing. Right. And when a realtor books an appointment and then doesn't give the seller or the listing agent the courtesy of letting them know they're not coming, that reflects very poorly on our industry as a whole. Right. And sellers really take offense to that. So now having a system in place where you're notified when that showing doesn't occur, I think works as a really good deterrent to really, level up, raise the stakes, to act more professionally and to conduct ourselves in a more responsible manner.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a key. I think the growth of the use of electronic lockboxes in your industry does go hand in hand with the increase in professionalism in your industry that I've seen over the last 40 years. Real estate has really become a more professional profession, if you will. And, technology did separate the people that should and maybe shouldn't be in the business. And that was a big fear a lot of them had, and it was well grounded because, it did help show who was cut out. And I think lockboxes follow that same trajectory. And a lot of the reason for it too are the buyers. Your buyers are far more educated and savvy than the buyers from earlier decades. They're doing their own searches on the public facing, real estate sites. And they understand what a lockbox is. And if you try to put they're gonna voice their concerns about the physical security. And to take this step further, RICO requires you to disclose, the security risk of putting this thing on your house. And if it's one of our lock boxes, those risks are minimal. But if it's a lockbox you purchased at the hardware store, a mechanical box that costs $19, and it's basically a hide a key, you might be just as well off putting the key under a mat, because those boxes are so easily compromised, and ours are extremely difficult to compromise. You've got to be out of your mind to try to break into one of them. Where these hide a key type of devices, it's very uncomplicated to pop them open and get the key out, and no one's the wiser.
James, sorry, I was just going to ask James if the Mississauga Real Estate Board, or if a real estate board doesn't make the decision to go with electronic log boxes, is it still feasible for agents to use this product?
In some cases, in the Toronto market, we have two big RE/MAX offices who are SentriLock customers. These are companies that have 200 and 300 agents. So from our point of view, they're no different than a 300-member real estate board. And so, we did enter into contracts with them. Our model requires a substantial initial purchase of a couple hundred boxes. So it's a barrier for the medium to smaller associations, real estate companies. But these two RE/MAX offices, are customers of ours, but we treat them just like a real estate board. However, it's not a retail product where I could just send. I get calls from Toronto agents every week wanting to buy lockboxes from us, and we're not a retailer. We don't, we can't. We're not set up to send them and bill them for a lockbox. It has to be, a bulk purchase of the association. We're like the wholesaler, and the association is the retailer that's providing the service to their members. So our system is designed to work best as an association product and not a brokerage product.
So let me just understand this. So let's say it's done through the association, or even in that RE/MAX example, the training will be at that end, on the user end of it. But I'm assuming it's not that big a deal for an agent who's not familiar with it at all to be given instructions on how to access the lockbox. When they're not doing it on a day-to-day basis, they're not part of that association. They're just an agent coming to bring someone, and they're not used to your system, but they're told, here's the instructions how to get the key out.
Yeah, it really is simple. It's very intuitive. So if they are a subscriber, if they have our mobile app on their phone, they're all set. They'll make the appointment just like they always do.
Right.
They'll make it directly from the agent or through.
But if they're not used to it, it's a one-off type of thing. Is that an issue, or is it hard for someone to figure out what to do?
It might be for some people, but we invest heavily in supporting these people. A quick call to our call center that's open 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to midnight, and an agent is standing by. Within seconds, they'll talk the agent through their fears of what to do, which is simply open the box, press the power button on the box so it emits a Bluetooth signal, and just stand there. In a couple of seconds, the box pops open. It's as simple as that. But they might need to be talked through that the first 1 or 2 times they do it, if they didn't attend training. And then again, if they're an agent who doesn't have our mobile app, say a Toronto agent wanting to come in and show a Mississauga listing, our Lockbox system generates flexible codes that can be used in those instances. So that agent walks up and they literally punch in a one-time code into the box, and the code works in place of them having their own valid credentials. And that's also how a listing agent would service the other people that need access to the house, like the videographer or the home stager or the carpet cleaners, things like the service workers that come in. So it's secure enough that the homeowner should feel safe with it on there, but it's flexible enough that it's going to really make the listing agent's job easy, because they can give access to whoever legitimately needs access. They can go through the lockbox. And if you're going to go to the trouble of putting one on the house, you want all the accesses to be through the lockbox. You don't want one off. I'm going to leave the door unlocked for you, or have the key under the mat for you or drive out and let you in. We want every access to be through the lockbox so that there's a reliable audit. That's, a big part of the security proposition is that there'll never be an anonymous entry into that listing if they use one of our lockboxes, where if they use any other method, including mechanical boxes, there's really no way of knowing for sure every access. And a lot of them will have been anonymous.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is not a product that some just homeowner consumers would want to have at some point too. If you're going to be away or you're working and you got to let a trade into your house to do something, and if you had a lockbox or something like that, you give them a one-time code, they can let themselves in, do what they got to do, let themselves out, lock it up, and put it back in the box.
Plenty of SentriLock employees use our boxes that way because we have that kind of access. And you see the smart lock industry going in that direction too, wait for the FedEx agent to let himself into your house through your smart lock. And incidentally, we're also in talks with the smart lock companies because a couple of decades from now, we won't have these big vaults. We'll be integrating directly with the homeowners, integrated
with their actual lock.
Smart lock system. But that's down the road, and there's challenges there because those things are designed to let people in, not to keep people out. And it's very much, centered on inside the home and interacting with the appliances and the lights and stuff. But that's the future, and we're already looking at that.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because all the successful companies that David and I come across, they're visionaries and they kind of look at the future and see, look how technology is changing, right? So, I give you guys a lot of credit. I think you guys have an awesome product. I think you guys fill, a terrific void. I think there's plenty of uses for this technology, and I think it's something that the demand needs to come from within. I think we as an industry need to step up and say, hey, you know what, this is good for everybody. It's going to be a great reflection on us. It's going to eliminate and act as a deterrent in a lot of cases. And it's going to make the whole experience a lot more professional to the sellers in the industry and to the buyers too. When you're a showing agent and you walk up and you put your phone next to the log box and it opens, I would be impressed as a client. I'd be like, wow, this is pretty cool, and high level of security and high level of technology. And I'm glad I'm working with a realtor that embraces technology and conducts themselves this way.
Yeah, realtors who use our system tend to incorporate the lockbox, a pitch for the lockbox in their listing presentation when they're trying to win the listing and competing with other agents for it. So those two companies in Toronto who use our system, they use that to differentiate themselves in a listing presentation. We're the company that cares about your security, and here's proof. Here's the technology we use for access, and and for auditing who hasn't been there. So yes, it becomes something that if you're not going to use it and your competitor does, it may give them an advantage over you. And I'm real proud of the Mississauga board for moving forward with this. Their intention is to basically, to encourage agents to subscribe to the key system, to get the app. That is an annual subscription. And with your subscription, everyone's going to get at a minimum one, free lockbox to get you started. And then hopefully that will create the interest in them buying more boxes down the road. Most of the other Ontario boards took a different approach to it, and the boxes are simply a core service included in the board membership. They decided just to throw the wide net out and automatically make every member included. Every member is a key holder, and every member has access to the lock boxes they need. That's one extreme way to enter it. Mississauga is taking a little bit more cautious approach, but they're still, they're so focused on expanding services of their association, and I'm real impressed by it. And I'm glad we're part of it as well. I'm just hoping they have a good influence on the Toronto Association. We'd love to see Toronto using our boxes, but I know a lot of Toronto agents wish they were using SentriLock. I take their calls every week, and I have to disappoint them and tell them, no, we can't sell you one box. It would have to be through your association.
Yeah, I find this all really interesting from my end as a lawyer, because as you guys know, the Lockbox system wasn't part of our closing process until recently. That was something we would hear about, and we'd hear from frustrated people trying to get keys for showings and for visits and things like that. But we would receive keys on closing. We'd meet up with our clients before the closing to sign documents, etc. We would get keys, and we would deliver the keys to the buyer's lawyer in escrow, and that's the way they would get access to the home once we closed the transaction. And really, it was a COVID-driven change in the industry where it was, okay, we're not going to do that anymore because we weren't seeing clients in the office, and we didn't want to get the keys and then use couriers to send the keys out. So we started incorporating the Lockbox system to facilitate the closing as well. So the keys were left in the lockbox. We finished closing. We now provide the code to the buyer, and that's how they're going to go get access to it. So on that end, we need a system that works. When they get there and put in the code, we need that to work. We need that box to open. And it's really frustrating when we get calls from people and say, you know, we've done, they're so excited, they get there and they can't get the key out of the box. Right. So, you know, that's an important system. And the fact that you can do these one-off codes, you know, to give it and it's user friendly, I think is a great facilitator, because we're never going to go back to the system of delivering keys to the lawyer and delivering those keys to the other lawyer and then going picking up at the lawyer's office. Like, that's not, you know, the genie's out of the bottle. We're doing it this way now. Right.
So nobody goes back to the old way. You're absolutely right.
So we need is the new improved technology, so we can actually trace with this technology who actually showed up at the house and got the code. We don't need the agent even to go access the lock code box after we close to provide the key to the buyer. The buyer should be able to access it themselves, right?
Yeah, and they can, yeah. And it's a common practice to leave the box on there, even with the new owner. Sometimes the listing agent is still involved with some follow-up work, some promises that were made. You know, carpet, there's gonna be new carpet put in at this date, and so the box stays on there until it's absolutely not needed anymore. Yeah.
But you can change the codes.
Yeah, well,
as you need them to give somebody, different people, the one-time code, you know, whether it's a trade or whether it's the actual buyer eventually.
And the technology changes the codes automatically. The codes are self-generated in the box, and they are different every day and can only be used at the time, you know, the appointment time that the listing agent gave them. So you might give the you know, the service worker a half-hour window or a half-day window or a 2-day window, you know, when their code's going to be valid. It's very flexible and under control of the listing agent exclusively.
Super cool. And you know, so many applications, right? But you know, you give, and I mean, you're not supposed to give out the code without the written permission of the seller, right? But sometimes the seller, you know, doesn't understand the risks, and they agree to give out the code to a carpet cleaner. Well, that carpet cleaner under the old system now has unfettered access at any time of the day, you know, for as long as that logbox is there and the key is inside, to the premises. And I mean, you know, we never talk about the worst case scenario in these situations, but God forbid, you know, it's a single mother in the house alone, and he shows up 11 p.m. and accesses the house, and you know, I mean, it just, you know, it's not a secure system.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about a worst case scenario? You without naming names, you're familiar with a real high profile homicide in Toronto in late 2017. A pharmaceutical executive and his wife were murdered in their home.
Yeah.
The home was for sale.
I think I know which case you're talking about.
Well, it was interesting to me that lockboxes were mentioned several times in the crime reports that I read. You know, that morning, the gardener and the maid let themselves in the house through the realtor's lockbox. They had the code. That's how they got in the house to start their workday. You know, the bodies were discovered by a realtor who was there with buyers. It opened the lockbox to let themselves in. The Toronto Globe and Mail, you know, during the investigation, ran an article. I couldn't believe my eyes, saying, you know, that the police have a real valuable lead, is that there was a lockbox on the house, and they're going to be able to get the lockbox and see all the accesses and be able, you know, to aid the investigation. They're going to receive this list of all the accesses into the house through the lockbox. And I read it in kind of disbelief, because clearly the writer didn't realize it was a mechanical lockbox that had no record of accesses. And I kept watching for the follow-up to that, and there never was one. They were never mentioned again. But lo and behold, 6 months later, RICO comes out with that June 2008 bulletin, all reprimanding realtors in Ontario about their lockbox practices. And I believe it was directly related, to that homicide, is why RICO took such a strong stand, reminding realtors and practitioners, you have to, manage this appropriately, and you have to get your sellers buy-in, and they have to, you have to get their understanding of the risks of what you're, putting on the house. And I just don't think it was a coincidence that thing came out 6 months after this homicide. It was very, very high profile. It had the potential to put realtors in a very bad light, and luckily it didn't. But it certainly caught my attention, and I think it's what led to a lot of those 14 Toronto area boards that did sign with us. I think it was all related to that RICO bulletin, and the decision was, they've been talking about electronic lockboxes for years, and I think that was the event that pushed the decision process, pushed them to a decision. And now they're 4 years with SentriLock, and they love their SentriLock systems, and it's become a very accepted practice in those markets. And I keep waiting for it to lead over into Toronto.
James, what do you think are some of the driving reasons why a board like Toronto hasn't adopted a system like this? I mean,
it's a real clear reason. They had a bad experience long ago. Toronto, before SentriLock was formed, in our earliest days, I heard the stories. Toronto implemented an electronic lockbox system, I think, around the year 2000, and spent millions of dollars on the platform. But the decision was to make it optional, 100% optional. And so many people opted out that it was a failure, and it caused such bad feelings and so much member resentment that the board tells me they are never going to do it again. They're never going to get burned again. They have no interest in being the provider of electronic lockboxes to their members. They encourage their members to address it on the brokerage level, but as I explained, there's a lot of barriers to that. So far only 2 brokerages have followed that advice from TREB, and so the brokerages are on their own, and they come up with their own solution. There are other there are retail products, that they can acquire in place of ours, and they're using them, but they're not secure. So that's, I think, should be a bigger concern, but it doesn't seem to be.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, as a brokerage, you definitely have my attention. Do you mind sharing what the minimum number of log boxes that you that somebody has to purchase is? What that
we say 200. That would be like a very small realtor association that would fit our model. So those companies did make it, and it's like about a $20,000 upfront expense to acquire those boxes, and for that we will build your custom admin system. We have a whole back-end system to create. It's very labor intensive, and so that covers our costs, so that it's not a losing proposition for us. And then moving forward, you're like a regular SentriLock customer. You have a customer service rep in our home office for your administrative needs, any reports you need, any help you need with anything. The agents, have access to our call center. And I can tell you those 2 companies in Toronto that use our system, like I said, they leverage it as one of their advantages, and they're fine that the other companies don't use us. They think it's terrific that they have this sort of unique relationship, and all the accesses are through the codes. So if you went to show one of their listings, our software interfaces with their showing service. So when you book the appointment through their showing service, the showing service is able to grab the code and provide it in the showing instructions, that one-time code for that showing. And so they're real happy with it.
Maybe you guys, I don't know the answer to this, others I wouldn't ask the question, but typically how many boxes would an agent want, an individual agent, active agent? How many would they normally want to have available? Because once you put it on a home, it could be there for a month, 2 months sometimes, right? Depending on the type of access, or are they putting it there, taking it off, coming back because they got to use it? So what would a typical agent, like David, like an active agent, how many would they really want?
Typically, they have a lockbox inventory equal to their average listing inventory. If they average 10 listings at a time, they probably have 10 lock boxes plus 2 more, so there's always 2 on the shelf. That would be the rule of thumb. And for an association, that's their rule of thumb, that, you go to a real estate board that provides SentriLock to all their members, their entire inventory is probably 110% of their average listing inventory.
Yeah, because we know like the market fluctuates, obviously, and
Yeah.
and like, right now someone says, oh yeah, I need 3 or 4, and then a month from now they might say, hey, I need a dozen, and can they get more quickly if they need more?
Yeah, they absolutely can. And some boards operate their SentriLock system like a lending library. Some associations choose to closely monitor where the boxes are. It's easy for them to pull reports and know who has the boxes. And they can reach out to a company and say, hey, you've had an excess of a dozen lock boxes more than what you need for the last year, and we have a shortage. We don't want to have to go buy more. So they call them back in, that they manage their systems that way. A lot of associations don't know. They just turn it over. After that initial implementation, every broker receives boxes, comparable to their listing inventory, and they're their boxes forever. When their inventory goes up, they acquire more boxes, whether they buy them from the board or the board subsidizes that for them, but they never turn any back in. So when we go in and replace our competitor, where they've been at a board for 30 years, a 1,000-member board might have 20,000 lock boxes, and because they just built them up over the years, and we know they only need 3,000 boxes. So I go in and I encourage them, don't ask us to replace all 20,000 boxes when 17,000 of them are never ever going to get used. We don't want you to waste your money. So we try to convince them to scale back and go back to the beginning and just get the boxes they need, for now and for the near immediate future. And then if the inventory changes and suddenly there's a huge inventory, we have a warehouse full of lock boxes. Typically, we have a warehouse full of boxes and can fulfill an order almost immediately. That hasn't been true in the last year. With the supply chain issues, our inventory reached record lows. We've had to really ration our boxes, but there's light at the end of the tunnel on that. The parts are coming in again, and our production is getting back up to normal. But boy, we were hit hard by this. All those ships out in the LA harbor not delivering their computer parts. Those were including our microchips for our lock boxes, and it was a rough year.
Yeah, because I'm thinking 200 doesn't go that far. Like if if you had a minimum 200 boxes, like if each agent needs 10, it doesn't go that far.
Yeah.
That's what we think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my juices are flowing, and as a brokerage owner, I'm thinking, what if we implement a policy where we require all our listings to have this technology, but we give agents the option to rent or to buy these log boxes from us, and they can rent them for $50 per listing, or they can buy them for whatever the cost is of the log box, and we just kind of make it a little bit more of a flexible solution for them. But I love the fact that the showing system that we use automatically generates the one-time password for members that are not part of SentriLock. Is there a way to differentiate, like if a realtor books an appointment, is there a way to mark on his profile whether he has an app or not, to know whether the system should be generating a one-time passcode or whether they should be granting him access to the app?
When they book through the showing service, they'll answer a question telling the showing service that they need the code. The showing service will ask them if they're a subscriber, and if they are, they don't need a code. And so the showing service handles that. And then when you get your showing report, when you log into SentriLock and view the full showing report for a particular property, it's color coded by whether they use their own, whether they were a subscriber who used their SentriKey app, whether they were provided a flex code, and there's even an app-based alternative to the flex code, and it shows you in the report through the color coding, which was which right there. So you got a nice visual cue of the activity on that listing.
It's amazing, James. Well, listen, you know what, you guys are doing some great things for the industry. And, I think as somebody who loves technology and who embraces technology, and I know David has a very similar viewpoint, we're very excited about, some of the changes that are coming on the horizon. And I think this is a really important topic. Safety and security should be at the forefront of every conversation. And I think it's our responsibility as professionals to really safeguard the safety and security of our clients.
Yeah, I think your homeowners will be impressed with you when you present how you provide, when you get into the access discussion, how you're going to provide secure audited access into their home. And when you introduce the lockbox to them, it could be a very impressive factor in your listing presentation. And we won't let you down. You know, being owned by NAR, they mandate that we invest heavily in our technology, you know, in being the most innovative company and providing the best customer service in the industry. And there's no company like ours. I call customer service companies all the time. I'm on the phone with Verizon, with Dell. I bother everybody. It's customer service, and I'm accustomed to waiting an hour for help and being triaged and go through 3 people. That doesn't happen with SentriLock. Our average speed to answer a call is under 20 seconds, which is unheard of. And total completion time of our calls averages under 5 minutes. And if you go to our Facebook page, you're going to see nothing but glowing reports of people saying, "Oh, SentriLock saved my skin," because people panic when that box doesn't seem to be operating properly. It's a panicky feeling. My very first real estate experience in my life, when my wife and I looked at our first potential home back in the 1980s here in the Lansing, Michigan area, the realtor couldn't open the lockbox. It was one of our competitors' boxes. It was electronic, and the thing was just dead. And it was the dead of winter, and that memory has never left that experience. I remember the guy's name, and I remember the house, and I know I didn't really know for sure what a lockbox was. But it was my competitor, and I've just never forgotten that first impression that it made on me. So I'm real proud of our company at the uptime. The boxes hardly ever fail. They're electronic and they're man-made, and something's going to go wrong sometime. But the success rate is very high. The failure rate of these boxes is extremely low. It's very, very reliable.
So what is the cause of any failures of these things? Is it like it's operating on a battery and the battery might have to be replaced?
The battery lasts a decade. It's a 10-year battery, and that's the primary battery. And then there's a secondary backup battery. So when that, if you open my lockbox and the battery is getting low, your app is going to send me a notice that I have a low battery, which usually means I've got about 90 more operations, to go before I have to replace that battery. You need an active battery because you've got to be able to remove the shackle and take off this cover to replace the battery. It's sitting right in here. So that's how we handle that. So battery failures are rare, but it can happen. When there's a defective battery, it's usually defective right away. Those are the kind of things that usually happen in the first days of an installation, if there are any bad batteries. It's very, very rare. Other failures.
And the batteries aren't rechargeable batteries; they're replacement because they have such a.
And it's a 10-year.
It's a 10-year
military grade battery. It's the same batteries that the airlines put in their black boxes. It's this high-end military grade as opposed to a commercial grade or even consumer grade. So yeah, it's a powerful thing. Other failures, gosh, interesting. I don't want to just say user errors, but there's an awful lot of user errors. Like they'll say, the box didn't open, the green light flashed and all that, and it didn't open. Are you sure? Tug on that little tab on the bottom, and they tug on the tab, and they go, "Oh, well, what do you know? It is open. It just was, it's still new and it's a little sticky. And it didn't just drop right down." Lots of calls like that, that people are kind of panicky, and there's a quick solution to it. Every now and again, there's more steps to take. There's been times when there'd be a coding error where the box needs to be recalibrated, but the agent, we talk them right through that on the phone. Say, press these 8 keys in sequence, watch the lights flash, and now the box is recalibrated, and now it will open. You're back in business. So it's most issues are resolved right then. I think the reviews we get from customers is that like 89% first call resolution of the problem. The problem is solved right there on that call in under 5 minutes, in the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
James, you mentioned, and I want to come back to this because you mentioned this a couple of times, and I didn't expand on it because I wanted to kind of dive into this at the end of our call. But you mentioned being owned by NAR, and to me, that is something really exceptional because My understanding from our conversation is that NAR has a whole separate division. And for those who don't know, NAR is the National Association of Realtors, similar to what Korea is in Canada, NAR is in the States. They're the overarching organization that governs real estate in the United States. They manage Realtor.com. They manage a whole bunch of different trademarks, including the Realtor trademark. And they do a lot of lobbying and they do a lot of designations and training and put on events. So NAR is the similar company to Korea, but it's in the States.
Exactly. And the CEO of NAR, Bob Goldberg, he's moved up through his career, focused very much on trying to make NAR less dependent on agent dues and more reliant on non-dues revenue. And so that's what SentriLock is to NAR. We generate non-dues revenue to NAR. We've been a profitable company. We've been in the black since our first 6 months of operations. And so NAR benefits financially from their ownership of SentriLock and are generating non-dues revenue for them. And that concept expanded dramatically to where it's a wholly owned, that business investment side of NAR is a whole separate wholly owned subsidiary of NAR now. And that's what they do. You call them an incubator, right? They look for startups, small companies who have promise, mostly in the in real estate technology, and potentially seed them with investment dollars to help the companies grow. It's a big part of NAR. And I don't think Korea is actively a part of it, but this program reaches out to Canadian companies as well. There's the acronym REACH is their division that is doing this in Canada and Australia and the UK and so on. So it's now has an international reach to it, and it's grown a lot. Because we were the first investment they made, and now I lost track of how many companies they have. Have you looked into it, David? Are there a couple hundred? Are there maybe just?
I haven't yet, but I mean, I'm really excited to kind of have a conversation with them and see if there's a way that an agent can possibly work with them, because we feel that we have an amazing product at an agent, and we feel that we're going to really be impactful to the real estate industry. But there's an adoption curve that we need to be mindful of, and that adoption curve can be a lot steeper if we have the involvement of an organization like NAR. First of all, the investment dollars are important for scaling, but second of all is the relationship and the association with NAR that would open a lot of doors for any new startup, including a company like an agent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, it's worth looking into.
So we're really excited about that. And the other thing that I'm excited about is that these incubation products exist, right? Because David and I mean, one of the reasons why we started this podcast in the first place is to really level up and encourage more professionalism and really raise the bar in the real estate industry. And I feel that that's what NAR is doing by supporting some of these companies when it comes to innovation, technology, and leadership in the real estate industry. So super excited to learn more about it. Super excited to see who's a part of the program. And SentriLock is really no exception to that rule. You guys have had exemplary growth in the last 18 years. And that's probably a big reason why.
I think we're the best investment NAR ever made. But I'm biased.
Unbiased opinion. Here you go. And you heard it on the David and David on Real Estate podcast.
Look at me. I'm on a podcast. My bucket list is complete.
There you go.
And how does Korea deal with this? Like, I assume you've approached them directly at some point, or they're saying go on your own province by province. And
no, the only involvement between us and Korea is an informal marketing agreement. For example, our last generation lockbox, we've always had the Realtor R on our lockboxes. You notice it's the Canadian Realtor R. So they want us, using their logo on our product in Canada and in our marketing materials in Canada. So they wish us luck. Oh, and our board of directors, we have a small board of directors made up of a couple of brokers and a couple of association executives. That's a real unique thing about SentriLock. But our newest member is a Canadian multiple listing service director from Calgary. So we open our arms to CREA, and we have a marketing agreement and a good relationship with CREA, but CREA has no vested interest and no ownership stake whatsoever in SentriLock. But they wish us well, and even with NAR being our owner, I often introduce us as NAR's best kept secret. I meet with boards every month, and the group I meet with are surprised almost every time to learn that their national association is the wholly owner of SentriLock. They don't know that. NAR doesn't promote us because I just think they don't want to ever be accused of, trying to cram us down the throats of their members. Their mission was just simply to provide the alternative to respond to this member-driven demand that NAR do something about the lack of competition. And NAR said, okay, we did it. We launched a company, we funded a company with a viable product, so leave us alone. And that's kind of what happened. I don't think anyone expected SentriLock to be the success story that it is. But everything, like I said, everything just aligned. And we were in the right place at the right time with the right product, and our culture, our goal to be, to provide exceptional service and to be a world-class technology company. We've been able to accomplish that, through the support we've had and through the growth we've had in the customer base we've established. So it's been a good story.
Amazing, James. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and
Sure.
and sharing your story with us. We certainly really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's an important one, and I think there's a lot of takeaways here. And my message to the industry and to other leaders and realtors is, reach out to your local board. Whatever your board may be, whether it's the Toronto Real Estate Board, whether it's the Mississauga Real Estate Board, and voice your opinion that this is a product and service that we want in the industry and we need. Reach out to your broker of record and tell them that first of all, they should be watching the David and David on Real Estate podcast, and second of all, that this product does exist, and for them to reach out to their local board and to ask for it, because I think as a whole, we need to all step up and raise our professionalism and talk about some of these issues and do a better job of explaining to the client what those risks are. Because I think if the client understands the risks with the current log boxes and what they really look like, I think this is going to become a standard de facto service that everybody will need to start offering in the future. And I love your vision of integrating some of these showing services with our current smart systems are coming up, because more and more we're going to see more and more of that technology. At my family cottage, we have a thumbprint thing that we can, I have the app on my phone. I can give access to whoever I want, right? So, I mean, it'd be great if I wanted to Airbnb my cottage or if I ever list the cottage for sale, if that could somehow integrate with the showing system and we could give out access using that system on file as well, right? But that's complicated because there's a lot of vendors using that technology, and streamlining everything is not an easy task. But I'm confident that if anybody can do it, you guys can. And
yeah. Well, and speaking of which, reminds me I need to plug also, in addition to our Lockbox service, we did launch our own showing service. It's called SentriKey Showing Service. At this point, our go-to-market plan with it currently is that we're only offering it to boards that use our Lockbox system, and we've got quite a few installations under our belt. Reaching out to boards who don't use our Lockboxes system is a next phase that's coming, but we're in the game as well. So we, just like we wanted to provide a viable alternative, to a monopoly in the Lockbox environment, we have the same mindset in terms of the showing service. There's not a lot of choices. There are a couple of nice companies out there with great products, and ours will be very comparable, or is very comparable. So keep your eye on us in that regard as well.
Awesome.
Well, we'll definitely encouraging you from our end. Anything that's bringing the industry next level, the technology. You know, if everybody had this today, they'd all be better off using this technology, more safe, more secure, simpler system. You have access, you know who's coming in and out. It makes so much sense. It's a question of just getting it out there and getting the word out. So if, you know, everybody that watches this podcast, I can't believe they would not say, hey, we need that too. Let's do what do we have to do to take steps to get this through our association to our brokerage into the hands of the agents. It's technology's there. Everybody should take advantage of it. Great system. Very interesting, James. Thanks for coming on today.
Great. So we're going to say goodbye.
We're going to say goodbye.
Might leave.
Hopefully not for long, because I think you know, we're going to have some conversation off podcast about the service, and you know, I'd love to be get involved and you know, be one of the front runners in the Mississauga area. I see lots of value, and I think the industry will as well. Thank you, James. Thanks for being on.
Okay. Go on, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.